Hi, and welcome to the first online training for the AMPED program. In this presentation, you're going to get a brief overview of the AMPED program, what it's like to be a mentor, how to interact with and talk with your protege. We'll go over confidentiality and mandatory reporting, and finally we'll cover some next steps for becoming a mentor in the program. Couple notes, this presentation will be a little bit different depending on if you're in Arkansas or in Houston, based on which site you're at. So your supervisor, either myself, Dr. McQuillan, or Dr. Gilstraight in Arkansas, will give you some specific instructions. There are a couple details that will be different between programs, so it might be important to verify the facts of this video with your supervisor. If something sounds off, just ask. So just to go over the AMPED program and how it's different from other programs, some of you may have had experience with programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters or Communities in Schools. AMPED is different in a couple of important ways. First, AMPED is a manualized program, meaning that your mentoring interactions and conversations with your protege will not be scripted, but they will be based off of a manual that we've developed. We've developed this manual by studying it. So nearly every year we conduct a scientific study of the program to figure out how we can make it better, to make better changes in our proteges' lives, in their school performance, and in their behavior. So in this way, AMPED is different in the sense that it's a manualized program and you have specific tasks to do each day. Another distinguishing feature of the AMPED program is that it is intentionally brief. Because we mostly use college students, we don't expect students to be with their protege for more than a year. And in fact, the program is designed to be completely implemented in under 6 months. Depending on the site that you're at, Arkansas or Houston, you'll be administering the mentoring program over the course of 8 or 12 weeks. So another distinguishing feature of the AMPED program is that it relies on a conversational style that was developed in counseling and psychotherapy research called motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a way of talking with youth about change that helps them become motivated to and committed to specific plans to change their behavior in school. In terms of what you will be doing, on a weekly basis, mentors go out to their local school. They meet with their proteges for approximately 45 minutes, covering the material that's in the manual that you have. You'll be setting goals with your protege. You'll be talking about their values and things that are important with them. You'll be monitoring their goals with them by getting their records from school, such as their grades or behavioral referrals. You'll be providing them feedback on how they're doing with their goals. And you'll also be having fun with your protege and hopefully having a good time. So an effective mentor is fun, enthusiastic, positive, and sincere. We also expect you to be punctual and dependable. For many of the mentees in this program, they have adults in their life that are not dependable. They can't depend on their adults to be punctual or even present in their life. Importantly, we want to be a difference for the mentee. We want to be a different type of adult in their life. So it's very important that we're punctual and dependable, that they can expect you every week at a certain time on a weekly basis. If there is a circumstance that prevents you from meeting with your mentee, you should tell us so that we can tell your mentee and reschedule times so that you can come and complete the session that you missed with them. Also, an effective mentors, they treat their proteges with respect. You should treat them as if they're highly valued, that you respect their worldview, even if it's different from your own. You should also treat your protege as someone who is destined to succeed. They're going to succeed, they just haven't done it yet, but you know that they will. Effective mentors also respect the autonomy or the freedom to choose of their mentees. This is really important, and it sometimes is frustrating. For example, if your mentee is failing math, you may want to force them to choose, or beg them or argue with them to choose. In this program, we've designed it specifically to help motivate our mentees to change, but we also respect their ability to not change. If your protege resists changing their study habits for math, unfortunately, we would have to let them fail because we're going to respect their freedom to choose. We're not going to force them to do anything. Effective mentors are consistent in using the manual that we've provided and completing the supplementary training that you'll receive over the course of the semester. Important, the reason that this mentoring program works is because we use very specific practices that are listed in your manual. You should be receiving this manual, if not before this training, shortly after in a PDF or a hard copy, depending on your location. It's important to have realistic expectations and celebrate each step towards goals. Sometimes your mentee may have setbacks, may not reach their goal, and it's important to set realistic goals so that you don't show your mentee that you're disappointed in them. You want to set them up for success, not failure. On the other hand, you also want to have high expectations for your mentee. You don't want to set the bar so low that there's no effort required to meet their goal. This is an important consideration, and your supervisors can help you set the right goal for your mentee. You want to set them up for success, but you also want to challenge them in ways that you can help them reach their goals. A mentor should never argue with the protege. If you find yourself arguing with the protege, remove yourself from the situation or contact a supervisor. Argumentation is known, and especially in middle school youth, to make them less likely to change rather than more likely to change. By arguing with a protege, you're actually doing the very opposite of what you'd hope to do by helping them change their behavior. Mentors should also never condone or accidentally encourage deviant behavior. If your mentee curses or uses a foul joke or discloses some misbehavior that they've had, never laugh, never reinforce that type of behavior. Never curse in front of your protege. One way to condone negative behavior is to model it. Be a positive model for your protege. A mentor should also never force, coerce, or argue the protege into anything, even if it seems like it's a positive outcome. Anything that you help your protege do should be done with full consent and through the choice of the protege rather than through your force. A mentor should also never break confidentiality, except in cases where potential harm to the protege or other people are made. We'll cover this in mandatory reporting later in this session. Mentors should also never make negative comments about a student's ethnicity, culture, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. You should never model behavior that is negative, such as complaining, arguing, bullying, or teasing. Try and keep jokes that are off color or potentially negative out of the mentoring relationship. An important part of being a mentor is to be engaging with your mentee. To be engaging, there are a number of behavioral and conversational techniques that you can use to maintain an engaging relationship. Some of the behavioral things that you can do are to establish and maintain eye contact. You want to avoid a creepy stare, and sometimes you can do this by bouncing your eyes from their eyebrows to their eyes. If you stare at their eyes too long, it can become kind of creepy and might weird your mentee out. You also want to use facial expressions that are pleasant and open. A lot of times mentors might not even know that they're making negative, seemingly frustrated, or confused facial expressions. It's best to maybe get a mirror and practice some of your mentoring sessions to make sure that you have an open and pleasant facial expressions. You can also show excitement by smiling and raising your eyebrows to show that you're interested in what the protege is talking about. You can express curiosity in what the protege says by saying things like, "Ooh, tell me more about that. I'm interested in hearing more." You can also reflect your protege's emotional experiences with facial expressions and body language. Importantly, we don't want you to become a cheerleader, where you're unconditionally positive regardless of what your protege is saying. Sometimes it might be expected and appropriate to model some negative emotions that the protege is experiencing, like frustration or sadness. In this way, you can model your facial expressions by feeling the way that they feel and showing them that you understand what they're going for. Also, to be engaging, you want to avoid correcting, judging, or making statements to your protege that contradict what they say. This can be off-putting and may disrupt the relationship that you have with your mentee. We're going to go over a couple different types of statements and approaches to talking with your protege that can help you in your ability to become a mentor. Empathic statements, also called reflections, are statements that take a guess at and reflect how a protege may feel. The tone of your voice in a reflection does not increase at the end, unlike a question. When you ask a question, the tone of your voice goes up at the end. For example, "You want to drop out of school?" That was clearly a question because my voice went up at the end. Whereas, "You want to drop out of school?" is a reflection because my voice did not. Notice the words are the exact same in those two statements, but the intonation carries that it was a reflection rather than a statement. Reflections communicate understanding. They let the mentee know that you understand what it's like to be in their shoes right now. Whereas questions communicate interest. Questions aren't necessarily bad, but you should use them sparingly. We use a ratio of about 1 question for every 2 reflections, so that you're reflecting more often than you're asking. For example, let's take a couple reflections. That's frustrating when your teacher calls you out in class. You worry about the future when you get bad grades on your report card. Both of those are reflections where you're simply reflecting something that your mentee hypothetically said. Let's compare the differences between questions and statements. Notice that in questions your voice goes up at the end, whereas in statements your voice doesn't. So for example, a question like, does getting bad grades worry you? Your protege may say something like, duh, are you even listening to me? Whereas a statement, getting bad grades seems to worry you, is a reflection. You're telling the protege that you might know how they feel. Open-ended questions, unlike closed-ended questions, are questions that cannot be answered in one-word responses. For example, a closed-ended question, do you want to drop out of school? The answer is probably either going to be yes, no, or maybe. Closed-ended questions typically stifle conversations, and they can lead the conversation to feel like an interrogation rather than an interview or a conversation. Whereas open-ended questions communicate interest, a desire to learn more, and they also provide the protege more opportunities to talk. In motivational interviewing conversations, which is largely what this mentoring program is based off of, we typically like to see the mentee talking more than the mentor. Open-ended questions are a great way to encourage your mentee to talk more than you. Again, as we said before, you should see for every open-ended question about 2 reflections or empathic statements. Let's look at some examples of open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. You can usually ask every closed-ended question that you would like to ask using an open-ended question. In this way, we don't expect any closed-ended questions to be asked within mentoring relationships. Let's go through a couple of these examples. One closed-ended question, do you like school? A good open-ended reframe might be, what do you like about school? What do you not like? Or, what are some good things about school? What are some not so good things about school? Another example is, do you want to go to college? That's a closed-ended question. You could ask, what makes you want to go to college? Another example of a closed-ended question is, do you think you could try to avoid arguing with your teacher? This is an important example because in a lot of ways when we're trying to coerce or force our protege into doing things, we ask closed-ended questions to trap them so that the only reasonable answer would be yes. Proteges pick up on that force and they usually resist. It makes them less likely to change. Importantly, an alternative to this is using open-ended questions by saying things like, tell me some things you could do to avoid arguing with your teacher during class. In that way, it gives them an opportunity to think about ways that they could do these things and come up on their own. Another important aspect of the AMPED program is promoting a growth versus a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is one where hard work, sustained effort, and persistence despite obstacles is the means to success rather than stable traits or characteristics like intelligence, personality, or ability. Really important in the AMPED program is that we focus on hard work, sustained effort, and persistence despite obstacles rather than these stable traits. The focus is on what the protege does, not innate talents or abilities. When promoting a growth mindset, you will attribute personal success to the student's effort, persistence, and hard work. We want you to avoid labels such as smart, intelligent, athletic, or able. These labels communicate that a student's ability to succeed is based on their innate, stable abilities rather than their effort and persistence. This may seem like a good thing to call a student smart, but what happens when they fail? Oftentimes, students that have a fixed mindset attribute their successes to stable traits and also their failures to stable traits. If a student believes that they're labeled as smart because they succeed, what happens when they fail? The logical conclusion that even middle school students can make is that they are not smart. Having a fixed mindset also prevents them from trying new things or persisting when they fail. Praise and celebration should be centered on the process of achieving success. These are the intermediate steps towards goals, rather than the characteristics of students. When promoting a growth mindset, you want to attribute personal success to the student's effort, persistence, and hard work. We want you to avoid labeling students as smart or athletic, or using other stable trait-like descriptions of their ability. Instead, our praise and celebration of the student should be centered on the process of achieving success, intermediate steps towards goals, or temporary successes, even persistence despite setbacks, rather than on stable characteristics of the student. Let's do a quick example of a growth mindset praise versus a fixed mindset praise. Let's imagine that your protege has recently kept his agenda for 2 weeks and passed one of the quizzes. A growth mindset might look something like this. Wow, you have been working really hard on your agenda keeping and quiz studying. If you keep up this type of work, you might be the next Einstein. Avoid a fixed mindset, where you say something like, you passed your quiz. See, I told you you're really smart. Because what happens the next time the protege fails a quiz? Then they'll think, wow, maybe I'm not smart, like my mentee said. By instead focusing on the hard work and effort, then the protege loses nothing if they fail, because that attribute of success is still there. Let's talk a little bit about when non-academic topics come up. The majority of your conversations with your protege will be focused on mentoring and your protege's academic performance. However, a big part of engaging your protege in mentoring will be to discuss things like mutual interests, life experiences, or other topics to get to know your protege. These may range from football to anime to computer games that they like to play. Importantly, when you discuss anything with your protege, you want to communicate that that information is confidential. You want to communicate that any personal information volunteered by your mentee should be considered confidential between you and your mentee. You also want to be sure to communicate that there are certain circumstances in which you will have to report what they have stated to the protege. If you suspect that your protege is the victim of sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, or emotional abuse, you must report this to your supervisor. If your protege is suicidal or expresses an interest in harming themselves, you must report this to a supervisor. If you think that your protege is homicidal, or if your protege threatens to hurt another person, you must report this to your supervisor. If a situation like this arises, which they rarely do, thankfully, you should stay calm. You should keep the protege under your supervision or place the protege in the care of another professional at the school or a coordinator of the mentoring program. You should immediately, as soon as the protege is safe, contact a personnel at either Arkansas or University of Houston to tell them that a situation has arisen. Site supervisors will be on call and available for you if one of these situations does arise. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that was helpful in giving you a little bit of an understanding of what it might be like to be a mentor in the AMPED program. Thank you so much for volunteering to participate in this program, and thank you for completing this training. I look forward to seeing you in in-person trainings, and if I don't get to see you, I'm sure Gil looks forward to seeing you as well. Thank you very much for your time.